Before the sticky flap, a letter was a luxury, something most people could not afford to receive. The history of the envelope is the history of who gets to communicate. 4,000 years ago, scribes in ancient Mesopotamia pressed messages into clay tablets, then wrapped each one inside a fitted clay outer shell, the world's first envelope. Persian courts wrapped royal dispatches in fine silk. Medieval Europeans sealed folded letters with wax. The instinct to protect a private message is as old as writing itself. By the 1600s, letter writers had settled on a standard. Fold the paper into its own packet, leave one face blank for the address, and press a wax seal over the edge. There was no separate envelope. The letter was its own wrapper. This self-mailer, sealed with wax, was how the world wrote for 200 years. But Britain's postal system had become a tangle of complexity and expense. Postage was calculated by the distance traveled and by the number of sheets inside, each variable adding to the final cost. A single sheet from London to Edinburgh could cost the recipient a full shilling, roughly a laborer's entire day's wage. Long-distance correspondence was simply out of reach for most. And here is the part that surprises people. The recipient paid, not the sender. You could refuse a letter at the door. Families in poverty regularly did. Members of Parliament enjoyed the franking privilege. Their signature on a letter exempted it from any charge. The abuse was rampant and widely resented across the country. By some estimates, only around 82 million letters moved through the British Post Office each year before reform, a remarkably low number for a nation of over 15 million people. In 1837, a former schoolteacher named Rowland Hill published a pamphlet titled Post Office Reform: Its Importance and Practicability. Hill's proposal was radical in its simplicity: 1 penny for any letter, anywhere in Britain under half an ounce. Prepaid, flat rate, no calculations at the door. Hill argued that the real cost of moving a letter was almost nothing. The expense was the bureaucracy of calculating postage at each delivery. Simplify that, and everything becomes cheap. The post office establishment was furious. The Postmaster General reportedly called Hill's foundation utterly fallacious. Hill spent 2 years fighting the resistance. In 1839, Parliament passed the Postage Duties Act, slashing rates across the board. The full uniform penny post was set for the 10th of January, 1840. For the first time, anyone in Britain could send a letter anywhere in the country for 1 penny. Prepaid, no refusal, no doorstep calculation. January 10th, 1840. The effect was immediate. Letter volumes roughly doubled within the first year and kept climbing. Within a decade, annual traffic had grown many times over. Hill had been right. But the reform created a practical puzzle. If the sender had prepaid, how did the postman know? You needed a visible, cancelable token affixed to the letter. On the 6th of May, 1840, the world's first adhesive postage stamp went on sale. The penny black, bearing the profile of the young Queen Victoria. On the same day, the post office launched a second solution. A ready-to-fold letter sheet by artist William Mulready, illustrated with Britannia sending winged messengers across the world. The Mulready was an immediate embarrassment. Satirists produced parody versions within days. The ornate imagery was mocked across the press, and within a year the design was quietly withdrawn. The plain envelope could now thrive. Before 1839, postal law counted an outer wrapper as a taxable extra sheet of paper. That rule was now abolished. The earliest commercial envelopes were made by hand. A worker cut a sheet into a diamond shape, folded its 4 triangular flaps inward over a central rectangle, and glued 3 down with paste. A skilled hand folder produced perhaps 1 envelope per minute. a pace that made true mass production impossible and kept prices too high for everyday use. Rowland Hill's brother Edwin, working with printer Warren de la Rue, solved this. In 1844, they patented a folding machine capable of producing thousands of envelopes per day. What had required hours of hand labor now took seconds of mechanical work. Envelopes, for the first time, were genuinely affordable for ordinary households. The diamond cut had a practical logic. A square sheet rotated 45 degrees gave 4 triangular flaps folding cleanly over a rectangular center, the most paper-efficient shape geometry could offer. Through the 1850s and 60s, manufacturers took the next step, coating the top flap with a thin layer of dried adhesive, what we now call gum. Moisten the gum with your tongue, fold the flap down, press. Done. No wax, no paste, no ribbon. The envelope could now be sealed in seconds without any tools. That sticky strip carried an outsized social meaning. The sealed gummed envelope gave ordinary people something previously available only to the wealthy, genuine privacy. A letter only the recipient could open. Postal reformers across Europe and North America watched Britain closely. The United States adopted adhesive stamps in 1847. Country after country restructured their postal systems along Hill's model. The word envelope came from the French enveloper, to wrap or enclose, and had been in English since at least the early 1700s. Before 1840, most people had little reason to use one. By the 1880s, envelope factories on both sides of the Atlantic were mechanized end-to-end. Cutting, folding, gumming, counting. Hundreds of millions shipped annually. In 1902, American stationer Americus Callahan patented the window envelope, a transparent cutout letting the address inside show through, eliminating a step for businesses sending large volumes. Through the early 20th century, the envelope standardized quietly. The long business envelope, the square greeting card envelope, the padded mailer, each emerged from decades of practical refinement. In the 1960s and 70s came the peel and seal envelope, pressure-sensitive adhesive beneath a paper liner you peeled away. No licking required, suitable for anyone sealing hundreds at a time. First-class letter volumes in the United States reached their historic peak around the year 2000. By some estimates, close to 100 billion pieces of mail were sent annually at that height. Then email reached a tipping point. Online billing, digital invitations, and messaging apps steadily eroded the everyday letter. First-class volumes have declined sharply in most developed nations since. And yet, by widely cited industry figures, something close to 150 billion envelopes are still produced globally each year. The envelope has contracted. It has not collapsed. What survives is the envelope's irreplaceable formality. A wedding invitation, a handwritten card, a college acceptance. Some news still wants paper, still wants the weight of something sealed. Researchers have noted that people process physical mail differently from digital messages. Opening an envelope, tearing, unfolding, slowing down, engages attention in ways a notification ping does not. Rowland Hill was knighted in 1860 and served as Secretary of the Post Office until 1864. He died in 1879, honored as an architect of modern communication. What Hill's penny had done was make communication a right rather than a luxury. Before 1840, you wrote when you could afford to. After, you wrote when you had something to say. There is something worth sitting with here. The clay envelope of ancient Mesopotamia and the paper rectangle on your desk share a single unchanged purpose: protect the message, signal the destination, keep the contents private. 4,000 years of ingenuity, clay, silk, wax, paper, paste, gum, machine, and the core intention has never shifted. Keep this safe. Get it there. Let only the right eyes read it. All of that history folds into the gummed flap of an ordinary envelope, a thing so routine you barely register it. A thing that exists because one reformer decided communication was too important to be a privilege. This is Origins. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. There's a new origin every single morning.